For many, many years, SCHD was definitely the go-to for investors that wanted an ETF with a pretty decent dividend yield, very minimal drawdowns during market corrections, and exposure to high-quality dividend compounding companies in the US. But as most of us know by now, toward the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, it seems like everything changed with the rise of AI. As of October 2022, the Nasdaq has returned 125%, the S&P 500 has gained over 90%, with SCHD only having a 35% return. And of course, that is including dividends. Now, the reason why SCHD has been consistently underperforming the major indexes is because it doesn't hold any Mag 7 stocks. And from what we've seen over the past couple of years with stocks like Nvidia, Google, really any of the Mag 7 stocks have been exploding in growth because of this whole AI wave. So it's no secret that SCHD has been completely underperforming the major indexes, which then leads us to wonder if it's time to either give up on SCHD or if we should continue to buy more and hold into the next 10 plus years. Now, a couple of you at this point are probably thinking, well, the goal isn't necessarily to outperform the S&P 500 or even match the S&P 500, but rather collect dividends every quarter, reinvest those dividends, and have a consistent 6 to 10% return every year for 20 years, which is totally fair. But this brings me to my next point, that there are a few very similar dividend ETFs that have still outperformed SCHD on the 3-year time frame and continue to outperform month after month. And the one that comes to mind is VYM, or Vanguard's High Dividend Yield Index Fund ETF. So with that being said, I wanted to kind of compare these two ETFs to really show that SCHD as of recently may not be the best choice for a dividend growth ETF. So looking at the portfolio for SCHD, there's a really good mix of stocks across all sectors like healthcare, defense, energy, and consumer staples. So you'll notice that the portfolio consists of very classic US companies that have been around for multiple decades and continue to increase their dividends. Another thing that you will notice though is that arguably none of these holdings are considered growth stocks, but rather value or just dividend stocks, which is also totally fine. But it's the number one reason why SCHD has been underperforming more growth-focused indexes like the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq. So if we look at the holdings for VYM, we'll notice that the number one holding at about 7% is Broadcom. Now, I might be a little biased when I say this because Broadcom has always been one of my favorite dividend stocks to buy and hold, but Broadcom has been a major proponent to the fund's growth this year because Broadcom alone is up 46% year to date. But it's not just Broadcom driving all the growth. JP Morgan Chase at number 2 is up 29% year to date, while still maintaining a 2% dividend yield. So VYM is a lot more diversified at nearly 600 different holdings, as opposed to 103 for SCHD. And despite having even more holdings, it still outperforms on the growth side. This brings me to the next point though about their dividend yields. VYM does have a lot lower of a dividend yield at 2.5% versus SCHD's at 3.77%. Now, another important thing to keep in mind as well is that VYM's dividend yield hasn't necessarily increased long term. It tends to just hover around 2.5 to 3.5%. Whereas SCHD's dividend yield tends to slightly increase year over year and has even reached over 4% earlier this year. So if you are someone that values a slightly higher dividend yield with small dividend increases every year, while also sacrificing a lot of growth and total return, then SCHD might be a better choice for you. But if you're someone like myself, to me, it doesn't really matter if the dividend yield is slightly lower. As long as I'm getting a dividend at around 2.5 to 3.5% every year, at the end of the day, all that really matters is the total return. Now, I'm definitely not saying that you should go buy VYM. I only use it as an example as something that might be an even better ETF than SCHD, especially with its performance over the past 3 years. And I'm sure there are a handful of dividend ETFs out there that are even better than VYM, but again, I just wanted to use it as an example. So with that being said, I know that some of you are SCHD purists and think that it's still the one and only dividend ETF to buy and hold. So let me know what you all think of SCHD as of today, and if you're still continuing to buy and hold it, or if there are other dividend ETFs out there that you'd rather own in your own portfolio, and I will see you all next time.